midst of trouble, sing,
I'm gonna be okay.
Sing,
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
See, I gotta remember that my God is bigger.
My God is bigger.
Than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. See, our God is great. This season of pain, it won't last always.
Hallelujah.
Life is taking everything that I have just to survive.
Open up your eyes, y'all.
You got $25 in your pocket, and you think another 10 in your glove compartment. But that family with no food would trade places with you.
Yes,
Give thanks and don't forget how you got it. And you gon' be okay.
Yeah. Can I get a witness?
Be okay.
Sing,
Okay.
because I gotta remember,
See, I gotta
no matter what I go through,
my God is bigger.
my God is bigger. Come on.
So I'm gonna be okay.
If one door closes, God's got another. Ha.
We gon' be okay.
Your doctor's not the final answer, y'all. Hey,
We gon' be okay.
you needed this storm to wake you up and make you better.
Be okay.
Now sing.
Okay. So I'm gonna be okay.
Yes, sir.
Give me your idols, every God that you made. You know the things you love more than me. You'd die if I took them away. Give me your options. Let me be the first one you call. Now you must choose what I am to you. God of all or not God at all. I'm God of all or not God at all. Give me the mountain you're not strong enough to climb. I'll restore the days that you threw away. I love to return wasted time. Give me the questions. There's not one too great or too small. Still you can't be free till you let me be God of all or not God at all. I'm God of all or not God at all. Tell me who's the King of glory and writes every one of our stories. Who knows the end before life begins and took all our debts to the grave. So give me your weapons. Be still while your enemies fall. But you'll never see till you let me be God of all or not God at all. Oh, tell me who's the King of glory and writes every one of our stories. Who knows the end before life begins and took all our debts to the grave. So give me your weapons. Be still while your enemies fall. But you'll never see till you let me be God of all or not God at all. God of all or not God at all. I'm God of all or not God at all.
Hey!
my song shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty God in the three persons, blessed Trinity. Holy, 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 all the saints adore thee, casting down their golden crowns around the glassy sea. All the cherubims and seraphims are all falling down before thee, which word and heart and evermore shalt be. You're holy, you're holy, holy. Though the darkness hide thee, though the eye.
Hello, good evening. My name is Melissa Lane. I am the Ephesus Health and Temperance leader in Saginaw.
My name is Bobby Porter, and I'm one of the health and temperance leaders here at Flint Fairhaven SDA Church. Welcome. We're so glad to have you.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening. We are continuing our series on suicide today. So last week we touched on depression, but today we thought it was very important to touch on suicide, seeing that all of the things are going on today in the news and the events that took place last week, and also um, with the COVID vaccine coming out, the uncertainty that is happening. We just want to make sure that um, we touch on this subject because a lot of people are. So we do have a video that we will play that we already have questions coming in, but we just wanted to just kind of change the format just a little bit during this session. Instead of playing the video that we played earlier today, we're just going to really focus on discussion this evening and play more videos along with our discussion. So our first question comes in, what happens when you give up hope?
You know,
So
we're going straight to this to the video, right?
we're going
Great.
straight to the video as we have Dr. Charles Betters, who gives a great explanation of that.
We live in a culture of death. All around us, there are different forms of war and rumors of war. and suffering that produces death. We also live in a sophisticated age of medical technology when we have to ask the question, is prolonging life the same as prolonging death? The medical questions and the ethical questions that arise are very difficult for us to answer because so much of what is being asked does not have any scripture to support it one way or the other. Hi, I'm Chuck Betters with Mark Inc. Ministries. Question was proposed in this form. Listen to this. A man writes, I am 75 years old, and my health has slowly been deteriorating over the past 5 years. Recently, my health has gotten much worse, and it is unlikely I will ever have a decent quality of life again. I am in constant pain, and I need assistance to do even the simplest things. When is it okay to give up and go home? I know suicide is wrong, but is it wrong to just stop fighting to live when you've already lived a full life? This sounds like a man who is suffering so much and has been suffering so long that he despairs of life itself. I think the first thing we have to understand is, if we were family and friends of this individual, to acknowledge his pain and to acknowledge his depression and to acknowledge the question that he is asking is important to him. He needs to know that you know that he has battled as far as he thinks he can go. I remember years ago when a little girl was on life support. I was a very young man in the ministry at that time. And this little girl was dying. She was brain dead. And they were questioning whether or not to turn off the machines. And I knew very little about the ministry and about what to advise this family to do, but they were depending on me to answer the question of, is it okay for us to give up? Is it okay for us to pull the plug, so to speak? And I made contact with an old seminary friend whose father was the Surgeon General at that time, Dr. C. Everett Koop. And I called Dr. Koop on the phone, and I asked him the question that I was being presented with. Is it okay to give up? And his response to me was something I have used over the years to address the ethical question of when is it okay to give up. And his response to me was very concise, very simple. He said, the question you have to ask is, are you prolonging life or are you prolonging death? You see, we live in a technological and medical sophistication today that allows for machines to keep us alive ad infinitum. And we have to ask the question, is this the right thing to do? In this particular case, one of the things that I think this man is asking is it okay for me to refuse treatment? Is it okay for me to give up and say to my family, I've gone as far as I can go? And that question is difficult to answer without knowing all of the circumstances, but I would say the same thing to him that I said to the family of this little girl years ago. Is what they are doing to you, is the medical treatment you are receiving prolonging your life, or is it prolonging your death? If it's prolonging your life, then we graduate to a new level of understanding. Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, beginning with verse 8, Paul says, for we do not want you to be ignorant, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia, for we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired of life. That sounds like this man. We despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death. And now if he stopped right there, we would be asking Paul the same question that this man is asking. Well, when is it right? When is it okay to give up? Then he says this, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us. On him we have set our hope that he will deliver us again. You must also help us by prayer, so that many will give thanks on our behalf for the blessing granted us through the prayers of many. Paul's basically sitting on his deathbed, despairing of life itself, feeling as though he's under the sentence of death. And he says, but I'm here for a reason. I'm in this situation for a reason. And that reason is so that I may be able to experience in Christ a reliance upon Him and not upon myself. In other words, it's drawing him to a greater dependence upon the Holy Spirit who indwells him. And it teaches you not a self-reliance, but a reliance upon the Spirit of God who indwells you. Also, you can use it to call people to pray for you, to call others around you, your family, your friends, to intercede for you in prayer, so that as prayer is answered and as they see God's love reflected through you, they too will be drawn into a greater intimacy with Him. I hope this helps.
Very sorry about the issue before. I hope you can hear me now, but just wanted to let you know that we are changing the format just a little bit. We're having a lot more discussion this evening. We will have other videos to help us as far as explanations and gives us testimonials as well as individuals who have overcome suicide. But I think Dr. Betters did a wonderful job as far as explaining the gentleman's question. We want to make sure that everyone understands that you can always go to Christ.
Yes.
God is
Yes.
always with us, and He will never forsake us. And He stated in the Bible, cast all your cares
Yes, right.
onto Him.
And you know, the thing is that saying you can always go to Christ does not mean that you cannot go and seek counseling or medical help. You can do that and still,
Mhm.
you still trust God from beginning to end. You seek counsel and you ask the Lord to help you know the right thing to do so that you can be stronger. And then ask Him all along the way, Lord, is this pleasing in your sight? Will it help make me well? And I just want to be well enough, not just to serve you, but to be able to have you work through me to help others.
Absolutely. Again, if you have any questions, please add those to the chat on YouTube, or if you're on Facebook, please add that to the comments so that way we can include your question into the discussion.
You know, one thing they did bring up in the video was to make sure that you take a person seriously if they say that they're feeling really, really down and they don't see a way out or they don't think they can go on, those kind of phrases, or even if they say, you know, I just want to take my life. Take them very seriously and don't just slough it off and laugh and say, oh man, oh girl, you know you're joking. You're not going to do that. Or we don't do that kind of thing.
Exactly. Suicide is nothing to be played with
No.
because it just happens all of a sudden. We really don't know. There are some cues, and I'll go over
Yes.
some here, but you just don't want to take it lightly. If someone is stating that they would just rather die,
Hmm.
or they make conversations about death all the time,
Hmm.
those are kind of like red flags for you
Yeah.
to ask them, are you okay?
Hmm.
Is there anything going on in your life that you would like to share with
Hmm.
me?
Or say, tell me
Tell me.
what's happening, what's going on with you, what's happening. I'm here for you if you want to talk. If they say, no, I don't want to talk right now, I'd say, okay, that's fine. Can I just sit with you?
Mhm.
One of the things I really want to emphasize, if there's anybody who's watching who may be considering suicide, I want you to know that there are people who were famous. And these famous people at one point in time in their younger life, or before they became famous, attempted suicide. And I think about what the world would have missed.
Mhm.
We would have missed knowing them. They would have missed the things they accomplished. And I think about their children. And their children wouldn't be there,
Mhm.
you know, if you committed suicide. The other thing is, If you commit suicide, you are really, really um, denying the fact that God gave you life. God gave it to you. Don't take away a gift that He gave to you. Instead, ask Him to show you how you can use the gift that He gave you for a blessing to others. And when you pray that prayer, God will answer it. Just be calm and just continue to pray and continue to seek the Lord.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I also just want to touch on just
Yeah.
a couple more signs, because this also leads into our next discussion, which
Hmm.
is going to be anxiety and
Hmm.
addiction.
Hmm.
If you notice someone that all of a sudden is they're drinking or there's substance abuse involved,
Yes. Yes.
you, you have to be aware. Those are again red flags
Hmm.
where things are not right in people's lives, and all of and have been experiencing probably the same anxiety,
Hmm.
as far as just this past year
Yes.
has, you know, that we have experienced.
Hmm.
Um, Everything was going okay,
Hmm.
so to speak,
Hmm.
but we got hit with the pandemic,
Yes.
and now we're forced to be in isolation.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in some cases, individuals are in situations where it's not pleasant domestic violence.
That's true. And you mentioned alcohol a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've had several people tell me that in their home life was, okay. It wasn't the best, but it was okay
Mm-hmm.
until one of the adults began to use alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was coming up, they used to call it king alcohol because when you're drinking alcohol, you think that you're invincible.
Mm-hmm.
You think that things can go well, everything ought to go your way. And then at some point, alcohol turns on you, depending on how much you drink or what you drink and all that kind of stuff. But alcohol can turn on you. It can make you do things that you never, ever would have thought to do
Mm-hmm.
when you were sober. There are men who said, I love my wife. I can't believe that I was the one that was beating on her. I just can't believe it. I love her. I would never do that. And they would plead with the woman to come back to them over and over again. But as long as there's alcohol in the equation, alcohol is the one who's ruling. Alcohol is the one who's king, not the person who's drinking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, again, that's where we're doing this series
Yeah.
to help with coping. Um, a lot of people have lost their jobs.
Mhm.
A lot of people have experienced death. And with the COVID situation, some people are not able to attend those funerals. So the grieving process has changed just a little
Mhm.
bit.
Mhm.
Um,
We did have one question from last week. Do you
mhm,
remember? It was brought to our attention that one person sent in a question and asked if we had ever been depressed.
mhm,
And, I confess that I have been. I have been depressed through things that have happened to me. And be honest with you, as long as we live here in this world, something has happened to us. It may, in varying degrees, um, not be as bad as maybe quotes of some others.
mhm,
But there have been times when I was so depressed. In fact, I can think of one time I was extremely depressed. And I was working full time, having to put on my good face to go to work.
mhm,
When I came home at night, the Lord and I were dialoguing until one day I said, Lord, you know what? I just don't know what to do. I'm hitting a stone wall. And it just so happens that it was coming up time for camp meeting.
mhm,
And I kept saying, if I can just hold on to camp meeting. For those of you who don't know what camp meeting is like a spiritual retreat that happens once a year and for 10 days. And when I went there, because really hadn't planned on it,
mhm,
I couldn't even, I hadn't planned or set money aside to pay for a cabin. And so I decided that I needed the Lord. I needed to be at camp meeting so badly. I went in my car and I stayed in my car. I got up early before everybody else got up early. I went and washed up and went to the meeting so nobody would know I was in my car.
mhm.
I made sure I was the last one in my car. And it just so happens that that was exactly what I needed. I needed that to get me over the hump, and the Lord blessed. So, because you look at people, you can't tell what their lives were like.
Mhm.
But I'm here to tell you, I'm an example. If you hold on, don't give in to it. God's got something amazing in store for you. Just hold on.
Absolutely. And since we're sharing,
Yeah.
um, I've experienced depression as well.
there was two major events that happened in my life where I was just in a deep, dark place. Back in 1999, that's the year I graduated high school. High school is supposed to be like the fun times, and especially your senior year in high school. And I lost both of my grandfathers on my mother and father's side that same year, 3 months apart. So April of 1999, I left. My grandfather on my mother's side passed away, and then in June, July of 1999, my grandfather on my father's side passed away. So at a time where I'm supposed to be excited and happy about what's going on in life, I was in a dark place because of the loss that I experienced.
Having to go through the grieving
Yeah.
process. It's not a good time to be happy.
No, no, and that was also a time where I started college, so it was a tough few months for me. But I was able to get through with family support, which is really key.
Yes.
Having the support system behind you, um, and with a situation like that, that's a time where you all can grieve together.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, that was a tough bout for me during that time. The second event was when my grandmother passed away about 12 years ago. After my grandfather passed, she was like the prominent figure in the family at the time, and with her passing, it was really hard on all of us as a family. And I know that time it really struck hard because I always looked to my grandmother for advice. She was always the go-to person. She was my prayer warrior. um, but unfortunately, it was her time to go, and I struggled with that for about a year. Um, in the video, it talked about people didn't want to get out of bed. That was me because I couldn't cope.
Right.
I didn't know what to do. But eventually, I did go and get therapy, which helped out a lot.
Yes.
And just want to say, I know a lot of people may frown upon therapy, but it really helps. It really
Yes.
helps.
Yes.
And that helped me open up to share and understand that it wasn't just myself going through this. Other people in my family were
That's
too.
right.
They were
That's right.
struggling just as hard.
That's right.
So again, just having that strong support system helped, and leaning on each other really helped out during that time. Yeah.
Mm. It's, no matter what the situation, grieving, whether you're grieving the loss of someone or whether you're grieving because of a certain situation that came up, um, it's not easy.
No, it's not.
And I used to ask myself, and I don't know the answer to this, okay? But I used to ask myself all the time, Lord, why? Why would you allow us to go through all this turmoil, all this sickness and death and dying and people getting hurt? And I don't know the answer. I'm sure when we get to heaven, we'll figure out the answer. But I really believe with all my heart, God doesn't want us to go through this. He does not. But He also needs us to see the end result of sin. Okay. When we get to heaven, nobody in their right mind, because we'll still have the power of choice, I'm sure, because that's the kind of God we serve. But nobody in their right mind is going to want to sin again. Not if we have to go through this stuff, go through pain. And that never was God's intention when He created us. And His heart hurts, I believe, along with ours.
Right. Nobody's perfect.
No.
We all go through situations, and it's okay to express those feelings. Um, you can't worry about stigma. You can't worry about what people think about you. You need to go through that process
Yes. In
in
fact,
order to heal.
we have to be honest with ourselves, don't
Exactly.
we? If we're feeling angry, that's up and acknowledge the fact that we're angry. And I don't mean go out and shoot somebody or whatever, but acknowledge there's anger. And then, like Melissa said, seek counseling, find a way to deal with that anger. And we've talked in other videos about how people dealt with anger. And we talked about how some people exercise and they made sure that they did as much as they could to get plenty of rest, but the anger sometimes is still there until you work it out. Many times you just have to have somebody to talk to.
Exactly.
Now, whether it's a counselor, a family member,
Mhm.
your pastor, a friend, you got to have somebody that you trust that will be able to let you be very honest and just tell it like it is.
Absolutely. Um, And again, with suicide, the teens, that that group is being hit really hard as far as um, giving up.
Mhm.
And it's sad, but I understand. I was a teenager myself and I dealt with it,
Yes.
so really need to focus on our teens and try to get to the underlying problems, being open and having that platform for them
Mhm.
to express their feelings. Um,
I really wonder too if maybe as parents of teens, I know it's hard because the last thing teenagers usually want to do is hang around mom and dad.
mhm,
But sometimes if we as parents can um, plan some positive times for them. For example, I know a lot of teens who may not quite fit in with the in crowd,
mhm,
but maybe there are other friends that they have. So perhaps parents might say, you know what, let's go, whatever. Let's invite Joey and his sister Rita or whatever, and let's do some things together.
mhm,
And so you build strong relationships with others,
mhm.
perhaps not in your class, but you make it positive experiences where you can.
Exactly. I just want to go over some stats real quick, and then we're going to cut to another video here.
Yes.
But just really quick, just some suicide facts and figures for Michigan. This is for actually the year 2020. Uh, the leading cause of death in Michigan was suicide. It's the
Oh
10th
my.
leading cause of death.
In 10th leading in
Yes,
Michigan.
10th
Okay.
leading cause of death.
Okay.
It's the second leading cause of death for the ages between 10 and 34. The second leading cause of death. It's just amazing with that number. And just makes me sad, just even having to state that, because that's the core group. That's the youth. That's the next generation
Mhm.
coming on. But we do have another video. I do apologize for rambling there, but let's go ahead and cut to it.
Okay. We'll be right back.
I think the first thing is to take them seriously. That's probably the most important thing, that if someone has expressed to you that they've been thinking about harming themselves, thinking about suicide, you need to take them seriously. Now, what you do after that, I think, depends on how much experience you have in assessing people with suicidal thoughts. So if you're just a great friend but don't have a lot of training in terms of how do you actually probe someone in their thinking, then I think the appropriate next step is get someone else involved who has some greater experience, and do it right then, with the person in your presence. Is there someone that we can call right now? Who else can we bring into the loop to help you with the struggle? It may be a pastor, it may be a friend who's a counselor, there may be other people, but that would be, I think, the first thing is to enlarge the group of people who are helping this person and can walk with them and assess their level of suicidality. If you're someone who has that kind of training, feels pretty comfortable assessing where someone stands in terms of their suicidal thinking, then I think you continue to probe with questions, and very specific questions. Well, tell me what you mean by that. Or sometimes people will give more of a vague, I don't want to live anymore, or I wish I were dead. And it is more of a passive kind of thing. And when you ask them further about that, they will say, I don't want to do anything to harm myself. I've not really thought about doing anything to harm myself, but I wish I would die in my sleep, or I wish I would get hit by a car, or something like that. And that's a different level of danger than someone who, as you ask questions, you find that they actually have a well-developed plan. Maybe they're going to take a bunch of pills, or they've thought about using a firearm. And you find out that, in fact, they have a firearm and they have a gun in their house. And as you ask further questions, well, do you have ammunition? Yes. Have you loaded the gun? Yes. Have you put the gun to your head? I did. What kept you from pulling the trigger? Getting that kind of information is going to help you to know just how imminent this person's risk is, and so there's a lot more to that in terms of the kind of assessment you need to make, but you need to make sure that you and someone else at least know where this person stands, that they actually not leave your presence if they truly are imminently suicidal. Many people, as you talk with them about their suicidal thoughts, you find they actually don't have a well-developed plan, and they are honestly not wanting to do anything, but they're scared and they're hopeless and they're struggling. And sometimes even talking that out actually is a beacon and a ray of hope. But I think the thing that I would stress the most is this is something very, very serious. You want to take it seriously, and you want to make sure as whether it's you or someone else who's more experienced is going through a proper assessment of the person's level of danger. And if they are truly a danger to themselves, then there may be other steps that need to be taken in terms of hospitalization and other things like that. But you have to get to that level of clarity and detail to know where a person really stands.
All right. That was good information,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
I really enjoyed it. I appreciate the videos. They they really remind us not only just how serious they are, but they give us hope.
Absolutely. And again, there was a great explanation in there as far as how to help,
Yes.
because we don't know. If you're not experienced, it's okay to reach out to different organizations.
Yes.
Again, we'll post the national hotline number,
Mhm.
but seek help if you know someone that is struggling.
And one thing too, we need to warn you about if you don't know this already. If you're trying to help somebody who's really, really down, um, it's going to be an uphill battle. Don't think if you just simply say, "I'm here, I'm going to help you," that they're going to turn around and throw their arms around you and say, "Oh, okay, I'm all healed up now." It doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
It's a slow process.
Hmm.
It's a healing process. But as long as you stay there with them, I think there's hope, and let them know you'll be there and give them hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But just want to touch back as far as with our teens. Why do teens try to kill themselves?
Mhm.
You know, um, but most teens are afraid to speak what's on their mind.
That's right.
They feel like they're struggling with something
Mhm.
that no one can help them with.
Yeah, and I think the teenage years are such a tumultuous years, not just because of that age and trying to fit in. If you think about it, their bodies are changing, they've got all kind of hormones that are
Hmm.
raging, and then on top of that, they look and feel like they're stronger and they are strong.
Trying to figure out who you are.
That's right,
Yeah.
and they want to do more things that are independent, and they're
Hmm.
not quite ready yet. They think they are, but they really are not. So it's a difficult. And then on top of that, they want to look like everybody else, dress like everybody else. They want to have people like them. They want to be cool. And then, and that's not even talk about the home situation yet.
Yes.
Whether they have
Hmm.
to clean up at home, or if is there food at home? Is somebody going to beat them at home? Or, you know what? Sometimes even as bad as a beating, will they be ignored at home? And they get the message that they really don't want. They're not wanted.
Hmm.
Nobody wants them there. So there's a lot going on in teenage lives. And so I think even if we're not part of the family, if we know of a teen, it's perfectly okay to go up to that person, put your arms around them, and let them know what you appreciate about them. Give them a little hug and just say, you know what? I'm here for you. If there's anything I can do for you, you let me know. I got your back. I care about you. I care about what happens to you. And maybe next time you might want to ask them about school, or just say, I hope that you're having a good day, and not expect a pat answer. I said, I really, really want you to do well.
Right. And it's important to be honest.
Yes.
you know, because young people can see right through you.
Yep.
They can tell a they can tell a fake from a mile.
Mhm.
You know, being honest and just being real with them goes a long way.
Mhm.
You know, don't keep asking them the same question every time you see them. Oh, how you doing? How's school going? You know, after a while, you're going to get the same question or answer. Okay, what did you do in school today? Nothing.
Mhm.
You know, but you know, just have real conversations with them
Right.
and make them feel comfortable that it's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay to open up and speak.
And I think that maybe one way is to not think of them so much as a teen or somebody you've got to talk to. But if you could just even view them as a friend and try to start a dialogue. Now, there have been times when I've tried to start a dialogue and they really weren't having it. So, I had to back off.
Hmm.
That's their prerogative. And I have to talk to me, but that's fine.
Hmm.
But it's okay to try to see them as your younger brother or sister,
Hmm.
and that you're here to help. And if you don't need help, that's fine. Let's just talk. Let's praise the Lord. Share the Bible text that you like. Share what you did that day. What kind of food you like or don't like. That's all right to do too. But then again, if they feel uncomfortable talking to you, then that's okay. I certainly wouldn't press it. I wouldn't push it. But if there's any way to share an activity together, maybe if there's an AY activity that you can do and share, that's great. Or praise them if
Hmm.
they participated in an AY program.
Hmm.
I really like the way you answered that question. I hadn't thought of it quite that way, but I really like it.
Yeah. And also, it's time to get creative. With COVID, again, we are limited to our interactions. So maybe you can't see each other face to face by standing 6 feet
Mhm.
apart. Call. There's Facebook Messenger. There's a lot of ways to
Yeah.
communicate now. And I'm probably old saying Facebook Messenger, but
I don't even know what that is. You know how old I am.
but
But you know what? It is time for another video.
mm,
It's time for another video, and take a look at this, and we'll come back in just a minute.
I have a friend that I met in high school, met her in art class. First, I was kind of scared of her because she was kind of emo, gothic person, and whenever I sat next to her, I started talking to her, and we became like best friends. Actually, at one point, she became my girlfriend, so I was really close to her, and then one day, she told me that she was moving to Michigan, and I was really sad because she had to break up with me because she didn't like long-distance relationships. So I was kind of disappointing area in my life, I guess. I was at home one day and she calls me when I'm playing Guitar Hero, just chilling, and I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, Ashley, how's it going? And she just starts like yelling and cussing at me. I'm like, well, what did I do? I mean, I didn't do anything. And she's like, I just can't deal with it anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she just kept yelling and cussing, and I was trying to calm her down. She just told me that she was sorry and she just can't deal with life right now. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? Just tell me what's going on. And she's just like, I can't tell you right now. I mean, it's just, I'm just going through a really bad time, and I hear like a cock of a gun, and I'm like, Ashley, what are you doing? And she's like, I just can't take it anymore. I'm like, Ashley, just calm down. I'm trying to help you. And then she hangs up. At that time, I kept trying to call back. No one would answer. And then finally I get a phone call, and it was her mom. And her mom tells me that she shot herself in the head. And right after she told me all this, I told her, I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. I started to cry. I just hung up and got down on my knees and started questioning God, like, why her, why her? And like, she's my best friend, she was my girlfriend. I don't know why it had to be her of all people. After all this happened, there was a point in my life where I did not want to go to church. I could not listen to sermons. I did not want to sit in church and listen to what they had to say. I just thought it was wasn't true or anything. I haven't talked to anybody about this. I've never told anybody my story, no one in my family and none of my friends. I just felt like this was the best way to do it, to ask everybody if they could just pray for me to not have a grudge on God anymore, and to also pray for the family of my lost friend.
That was a very, very sad, sad video. That's the thing. Sometimes when you commit suicide, you don't think about those you're leaving behind. You don't think about like the young man who, even though his girlfriend moved away, he still was very interested in her. And I'm sure that she had family members that loved her. Um, I think about this morning, the lady who lost her son, and she thought he was in a good place, but then he just couldn't make it, and he just couldn't make it. So suicide not only affects the one who passes, it also affects those around. A lot of hurt, a lot of hurt can come from that. And if nothing else, if you're thinking about committing suicide, please rethink it. Rethink it. I know you're hurting. Let's try to find help for you. We don't want to cause other people to hurt.
And this just goes along with our reoccurring theme in this discussion, as far as how can I help a friend?
Yes.
How can I help a loved one or someone that is close to me? Having that open conversation makes a difference.
Yes, it does.
I know it may seem like we're being repetitive here, but it really does make a difference. You just never know what people are struggling with.
Yes.
Um, and when they're comfortable with you enough, they'll start to open up to you, and you can get to the root of some issues.
Right. I'd like to issue a challenge. Um, I'd like to challenge myself, Melissa, and those of you who are watching. Go to people who are really quiet. Go to people who maybe are standing just a little off from a group, and go up to them and engage them in conversation. Just by engaging, you let them know that they are important to you. If you see a person who quite doesn't look like they're fitting in, or they feel awkward, not because they look different or look awkward, but just that you can tell that they're anxious about something and they're not quite at peace. Go up to them and just start talking. If you don't know anything about them, just ask them. I'm so glad to see you here. I don't know your name. My name is Bobby. I'm glad you're here. Tell me about yourself. And just want to let you know before you open your mouth, I think you have the most gorgeous smile. I saw you smiling at the young lady when you guys were shaking hands. And I just thought to myself, you know what? What a beautiful smile. I'd like to get to know that person.
That's a great point, Bobby, because you never know.
No.
You never know what people are going through.
You can't tell from the outside, can you?
You can't. You can't. But having genuine relationships, genuine connections makes that difference. It
I
really
think
does.
even in the church, if we see that there's a potluck and everybody around the table is talking, but yet there are one or two people that are eating their food, their face is down, they're looking down to where their plate, maybe they're looking up, but they're not saying anything. Nobody's saying anything to them. That's the time I think that if Christ were in the room, he would come close to that person, or that person will be drawn to him.
Absolutely. All right, so we are going to show our last
Our
video.
last video. Boy,
of
time
the
went
evening.
fast, didn't it?
It flew by.
Mhm.
It flew by. But this is a message of hope.
Yes.
I grew up in New York. In my teen years, I kind of went on a different path and started to do things my own way. I started to date a young man and I wound up pregnant. And things were pretty bad in the marriage. After that, we realized that it just wasn't going to work. So we separated. So once the divorce was final, I think I really, really felt the brunt of pain. My house was in foreclosure. I was deep in debt. The pain that I started to know was something that I didn't think I could handle. I became suicidal. I went to take my trash out, and the next door neighbor was leaving her home as well.
And I was just led to go talk to her, and she began to tell me what was going on in her life. And I said, God loves you. I said, we all go through tests, but guess what? God is there to help guide us and lead us. She started crying, and I said, may I pray with you? I wanted to encourage, strengthen, and comfort her.
And I started to feel something that I hadn't felt in a long time. I started to feel hope. So I immediately thanked her, for speaking that word into my life when I was at such a low, low point. It just basically sparked something in me to do better for myself and do better for my children. I started to attend a church out here. People were so kind, and, I found myself smiling again. I remember coming across a young lady at my job, and she was distraught, and I remember speaking to her and saying, your life is not over. Everything is going to be okay. And I felt honored to say that because somebody said that to me one day. So sometimes it's great to speak to others and remember where you've come from and remember what God has done for you in order for you to bless another person.
Yes, a message of hope.
Yes, a
Amen.
message. See your neighbor God.
Yes.
Increase life into them.
Yes.
Pray.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's how it should be.
That's right. It reminds me of the parable in the Bible about this man who was beaten up, and the priest went by and he left him alone, and somebody else from the Sanhedrin went by, but yet the Samaritan came by. That's what we do when we speak hope. We're being that Samaritan that God wants us to be for our brothers and our sisters.
So, like Bobby was saying earlier, you never know what people are connecting with.
Right. Right.
You see someone that's down, don't beat them.
Mm-mm.
Don't make them feel worse than how they were already feeling.
Right.
Don't do the shoulda, woulda, coulda person.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't do that.
Just help them.
Hmm. And the other thing I want to say real quickly is that there may be people who come to you for help, and maybe they don't believe in God. Perhaps they don't believe in God's word, but you speak the word anyway because you are God's servant. You touch them, let them know you care about them, and you speak the word. If you have a promise that God has given you, like one that I love is Nahum 1:8, and I'm not going to recite it. You can get to go home and read that yourself. But that's a very promise that I hang my hat on. Another one is in First John 1, chapter 1, and it's I think it's verse 7 through second chapter of First John, chapter 2, 1 and 2. So those 4 or 5 verses are verses that I hang my hat on, I trust. And remember, God cannot lie. In fact, I've had many discussions with him on my knees, and sometimes not on my knees. Sometimes I was walking back and forth, and I'll be reciting a promise, and I say, God, you promised me. You promised, and you cannot lie. You cannot go back on your promise. And you pray that same prayer over somebody, even the person who says that they don't believe in God.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to wrap this discussion up.
Hmm.
This has been
Wonderful.
a wonderful topic
Yes.
to talk about, even though it's a tough topic to talk about.
Yes.
It's something that needed to be said.
Yes.
And we just want to make sure that you are aware that we are available.
Yeah.
You can always go to our church's website. You can go to Ephesus website at
Hmm.
esdac.org or Fairhaven's website at fairhavensdac.org. If you need guidance, we can definitely try to help you. reach the right individuals. If you need prayer, we definitely can help you with prayer. So
Yep.
please join us next week.
Yep. And don't be afraid. Come back next week.
Yes.
And if you don't forget to turn in your questions also, write them in the chat or put them on Fairhaven or Saginaw Ephesus website.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So thank you for joining us this evening. You have a blessed evening.
Bye, everybody. See you next week.
He talks to me and the freedom bell